Hi, I'm David, a former paranormal investigator, and this is my loyal companion, Phantom. Today we bring you the chilling story of Mike, a tale so mysterious and terrifying that it still sends shivers down my spine. This is not just another ghost story. This is a haunting that defies logic, one that still lingers in the shadows waiting to be told. And trust me, by the end, you won't just be scared, you'll be questioning what's real and what's lurking in the dark. So before we begin, hit that like button and subscribe, because by the time we're done, you might just be too terrified to even move. Mike was exhausted when he went to bed that night. As his head hit the pillow in his newly purchased Victorian house in Salem, he fell into a deep sleep. His peaceful slumber was soon interrupted by an unsettling sensation. In his sleep-addled state, Mike tried to shift positions, but his entire body felt paralyzed. His arms seemed bound, restrained one after another, as if invisible ropes were holding him down. Like a fish out of water, he thrashed and struggled, but breaking free seemed impossible. Mike twisted his wrists with all his might, desperately trying to free his hands while kicking his legs, but his arms remained bound, and his legs felt non-existent. Suddenly, wet clay seemed smeared across his face. The earthy, damp smell of soil filled his nostrils, making each breath a struggle. His panic intensified, yet the mild summer night offered some comfort through the open window. Distant passing cars, chirping crickets, and croaking frogs reminded him that the outside world existed, that help might be possible. This hope shattered when all sounds abruptly ceased. Even in his semi-conscious state, Mike wondered what had happened. Why had all the sounds stopped? Why was the air becoming so thin? As his bound eyes struggled to make sense of it all, a new sound emerged that raised even more questions. Mike's head snapped toward the source of the noise, and then, one after another, it sounded like nails being hammered in succession. His breathing became labored as he struggled desperately for air. Mike was fighting for his life now, thrashing with every ounce of strength he possessed. In one final effort, he channeled all his energy, combined the force of his arms and legs bones, and with an anger-filled scream, he broke free, as if breaking out of a coffin. Suddenly he could feel the cool, damp air, and his lungs, which had been starving for breath, now gulped in months' worth of air in a single moment. His wide-open eyes filled with confusion as his room appeared completely normal. No clay, no dirt, no other person. Nothing out of place. But this moment of relief was quickly imprisoned by fear when he heard a small sound. When he turned on the light, Mike found a single nail lying on the floor next to his bed. Where had this nail come from? He had just heard nails being hammered. Following some instinct, Mike took the holy water he had brought from church and poured it over the nail, throwing it out the window. When he heard it land, he turned to find another identical nail lying behind him with drops of water scattered around it. Mike's eyes widened with horror. Keeping 4 steps away from the nail, he silently left the room, locked the door from outside, and went straight to lie down on the living room couch. Exhaustion overtook him, and he soon fell asleep, managing to get through the rest of the night peacefully. The second night was worse. Mike lay in bed, the air conditioning humming softly, when he felt presences entering his room. Shadowy figures moved around his bed, some sitting beside him, others arranging furniture. Their voices seemed engaged in conversation, though he couldn't make out the words. Then suddenly, everything went silent. When he opened his eyes, he found himself in what appeared to be a church, his bed positioned between rows of pews. Dark figures sat on either side, their faces hidden in shadow. At the front, a priest's silhouette raised his hand, pointing directly at Mike while speaking. "And let us pray for the soul of Pete Ross," the priest intoned. Mike's face, already pale with fear, turned ghostly white as he realized the priest was addressing him as Pete. The congregation turned toward him in unison, their shadowed faces all fixed upon him. The third night brought new terror. As Mike lay in bed, he heard scratching coming from behind the wall. The noise grew intense, accompanied by children's whimpers. Small handprints began appearing on the wall as if pressed from the other side. The prints were too small to be adult hands, and they kept appearing, sliding downward, leaving long streaks on the wall. Each morning, Mike would find his room exactly as it had been. No handprints, no nails, no evidence of the previous night's horrors. Finally, he decided to investigate the bed itself. Examining it carefully, he noticed a maker's mark in one corner, Oak Crafts, and a serial number, 245B005. After searching the town, he found the old but elegant furniture store. The elderly owner's eyes lit up with recognition when Mike mentioned the serial number. Ah, the piece. I made it with my own hands from Mr. Pete Ross. Only crafted 4 beds like that in my career. All solid oak, should last another 50 years at least. Mike's blood ran cold at the mention of Pete Ross, the same name from his nightmarish church vision. When he asked where the bed had been delivered, the address the old man gave him made his heart stop. It was his house. Don't worry, Phantom. Mike is safe and sound. Asleep.
Mike's mysterious disappearance has left the Salem Police Department baffled. Officers confirm he returned home, but since that night, he hasn't been seen. Where is Mike? The search continues.
If you made it this far, you're braver than most. But the real question is, do you want to know what happened next? And more importantly, who was Pete Ross? Let me know in the comments below. And remember, some stories don't end when the video does.